Well, I think the first issue here is that the UAE and Israel haven't really ever been at war. If you look at what happened in 1979 and 1994, Egypt and Jordan were at war with Israel and fought battles against them, numerous battles against them. They border Israel. The UAE is over 1,000 kilometers away. And yes, nominally, it was difficult to have relationships. They didn't recognize, well, at least the UAE didn't recognize Israel. And at times it was difficult for Israelis to pass through Dubai if they wanted to change planes to go to India or something. But this isn't really the same as what has happened in the 1990s and the 1970s. So I think we're in an easier place in terms of making that agreement stick. And I think certainly in terms of the geopolitics of the region, the UAE and Israel share a lot of interests in common.
Yet, having said that, the issue of the Palestinians still remains as key to this deal, it seems, as to any other deal in the Middle East at this point. What do you think happens next in terms of the position of the Palestinians and the direction that we head in terms of a Palestinian state or the two-state solution?
I don't think it's great for the Palestinians, if I'm really honest with you, because whilst the UAE is only sort of one part to a much bigger puzzle, it's opening a conversation that says you don't really have to recognize a withdrawal of Israeli troops or Israeli forces from Palestinian land in order to make peace. It's not necessary. It's not required. And if that sort of door is opened, it's very hard to close it again. And there are other countries, as you well know, that might well decide that this is for them too. So you've got Oman and Bahrain, which would be the two next most obvious contenders for a peace deal. Morocco is another one which already has some form of relationship with Israel. So this could begin to be a sort of domino effect. I don't think it will happen tomorrow. And there's certainly some domestic opposition in both Oman and Bahrain to that. But it's the beginning of a process, right? So I think what Jared Kushner was talking about was that this is a step. It's not everything. It's not a complete regional peace deal, but it's a step. And if you're the Palestinians, what you're trying to do is say, hang on a second, no movement until we get some justice, until we get our rights, until we get our state. And that's not what's happened. So that's taken a massive block off the table and I think undermined the Palestinian cause.